Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, which is the first in a series, and the rest of the series we will be following up later this week. So today we're looking at steps 1 and 2 of the VAT return, which is preparing and reconciling with ease. So my name's Jackie, I'll be taking you through today's webinar, but we've also got some of the team on hand in the background for your questions. So please do, if you've got any questions, get them across to us throughout the session. You don't need to wait till the end. So just some housekeeping first of all. So you will notice that you've been placed on mute, and that just means that you can't speak to us directly, but if you do have any questions, you're more than welcome to send them across to us. So you can do that using the icon that looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in the middle, and that will send your questions across. And where possible, we'll try and provide some demonstrations to support any of your questions too. There is a copy of today's slides as well, so if you do want to take a copy of those, then use the icon that looks like the document with the folded corner, and that will allow you to download the slides. After today, there will be a follow-up email, and that will have a link to a recording and also to register for upcoming webinars. So please do keep an eye out for that one. We've got a really exciting week starting next week. We're going to be starting our next badge, so a banking excellence badge. And I've got a little video to show you towards the end of today's session. So please do hang on for that if you want more information on earning your digital badge. Apologies. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover today. So a brief introduction into the VAT return, and the demonstration will go through steps 1 and 2. We'll then have any links to further support and any outstanding questions towards the end as well. Before we begin though, I do just want to pop a quick poll across. So on these sessions, we do get people joining us from lots of different backgrounds who are maybe in the UK, you may be in Ireland, you may be doing a standard VAT return, you might be doing something on the specialist VAT scheme. So what we try and do is we try and sort of hit a demonstration data set that covers most of you. But I do just want to keep getting guidance on who's joining these sessions so that we can make sure that these are relevant. So I am just going to pop a poll to see what type of return you're generating. So are you a UK VAT return submitter, or are you Republic of Ireland, or are you in a situation where you need to do both? And this is just to make sure the data we're using is relevant. So if you can pop something into the vote for us, that would be great. There is a slight delay on this, so I do need to keep the small talk going for a moment or two while I get your submissions through. Okay, they are coming. That's fabulous. Okay, we have hit 80%, so I will close it there. Don't panic if you didn't get yours across. Do not worry at all, that will not impact today. So I'm just going to share the poll, and as you can see there, 97% of you are doing a UK return, and we've got a small percentage of you doing a Republic of Ireland return. So today, the demonstration will be using a UK data set, and it will be a standard VAT company. Okay, now that's not to say if you're from Ireland or you're doing an Irish return that you need to leave, because we will try and highlight the differences along the way. Okay, most of the principles are the same regardless of where you're submitting from. Okay, but it's just to give you that little bit of awareness. Yours might look slightly different. Okay, so I'll just go back to the slides and stop sharing the poll. And just to mention, just before we jump in, that if you do find after today's session that you do want a little bit of more one-to-one support and you would like something that's a bit more bespoke to your needs, we do offer one-to-one training. And we've given some examples there of, situations where you might find it quite useful. So it might be that you're new to stock control or the construction industry, or it might be as simple as you've upgraded to Sage Accounts Professional and you want to get to grips with those new features. So if you do find after today you want something a little bit more bespoke, you can email us on the email address that's in the handout, just so that you can get a quote on that as well. But we'll move on. And like I said, we're going to go into the demonstrations there and do some background in just a moment. Now, as I mentioned, we have you both from the UK and Ireland. So what we have done in the handout is highlight those sort of subtle differences you may see through the software. So when you're looking at the handout, we have done it with you both in mind. Now, I am going to jump into my data set at this point. Most of today is demonstration based, so I am going to go into it now. So the first place I'm going to start is in the VAT module. And the VAT module here is where it holds all of your VAT returns. So as you can see in my data set here, it's got my VAT returns going back to 2019. In the UK, if you used to do an EC sales list, it also holds it within here. EC sales lists tend not to be a thing since Brexit. But if you're in Ireland and you're doing things like a VAT return or your return of trading details, the RTD return, then you will find that they are held in here too. So it's not just VAT returns for everyone, depends on your reporting needs. At the top, because I'm in a UK company, I have VAT return, I have scale charges and EC sales, whereas that is slightly different in Ireland. You'll have your VAT return and your RTD return options up here. The VAT return can be run for any period. Okay, so if you're a monthly submitter, a quarterly submitter, or an annual submitter, all of those are supported. You are in control of the dates that you use on the VAT return. Now, with that said, if you're in the UK in particular, when you're generating your VAT return, it does need to match the period that HMRC are expecting it for. So that's called an obligation period. So if they're expecting a return for September to December, you will need to make sure that you generate that return in the software. Now that might sound quite obvious, but speaking from experience, when we went through making tax digital, which is a few years ago now, what we found was lots of customers who were maybe on a quarterly submission were actually, rather than doing one quarterly submission, they were doing 3 monthly submissions and then joining the figures together outside the software. And lots of customers had to transition away from that so that they could do a quarterly return. So just to make you aware, what you're putting into the software should match what HMRC or ROS, if you're from Ireland, are expecting. So we're going to be generating the next VAT return for this data set. As you can see, we have previously reconciled up to the end of September. So we're due to do our October to December VAT return now. Now, along the way today, what I'm going to try and do is highlight some of the key places customers tend to go wrong. And this can be quite a big call generator into the technical support lines. And what we want to do is try and prevent that for you so that you don't have to spend time waiting to speak to someone over sometimes quite easy fixes. So I'm going to go into the VAT return next, and clicking on VAT return, you can see what that's done is it's actually picked up my previous VAT return, and that's because I had that highlighted. Now, believe it or not, that is a big call generator, is how can I just get into a blank VAT return? And the key is to make sure nothing's highlighted. But as you can see there, I'm clicking on it, I can't unhighlight it. So the way I do that is to actually swap unclear, just make sure there's nothing highlighted at all. So you can use the clear option there, and that means nothing's highlighted. That happens throughout the software. So if you're running reports and you're accidentally picking something up and you can't see why, just make sure you're clear and you've got nothing highlighted in error. So as you can see there, I've now got nothing highlighted. I'm going to go into VAT return, and now we have a blank return. So like I say, very easily done, very easy to fix, but sometimes when you're trying to get into the nitty-gritty of VAT returns, may cause you to call into technical support just to make sure you're doing things right. So just make sure you're clear. Okay, so the biggest thing I need you to take away from today is, before you go any further in a VAT return, is to take a backup or make sure you have a recent backup. Okay, so you can see here on mine, it's saying my last one was done on the 7th of January. That's not great, okay? So if I've processed since the 7th of January. That's 20 days worth of processing. And if anything goes wrong and I need to restore that back up, I need to go right the bit way back to the 7th. When we do a VAT return, we do not have an undo option. Okay, so if I accidentally click reconcile on the next screen, I can't undo that reconciliation. So we need to make sure we've got a recent backup. So I'm going to quickly do that. And when you do a backup, I'm just going to leave it where it is at the moment. It will ask if I want to check the data. I would say always make sure you check the data and make sure there's no errors in the data, because errors are down to damaged files but can cause odd things to happen on your reports. And what essentially we're doing with a VAT return is creating a report which we're going to report to HMRC. So we want to make sure that we're really confident in that data set. So mine's just running through a check data, making sure that I don't have any errors in there. And once we've got no errors, we can take the backup and we're good to go. So we've got no problems to report, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. And when we bring the error report across, it's the errors that we're making sure there's none of. So I'm just going to close that down, and the backup's been successful. Okay, so now if I accidentally reconcile, I'm only going to lose everything that I've added since that backup. Okay, so please do, even if you're just coming in the VAT return to have a look, you just want to generate the figures, you don't want to submit anything. Believe me, I've been on that call on technical support where someone has accidentally clicked reconcile and their backup isn't a recent one. Okay, let's not be in that situation. So next we're going to move on to the date range. Now again, this might seem self-explanatory, but there are options here that do cause people to sort of second guess and just want to double check things. So first of all, recognize it is picking up my next quarter there. So it has picked up that I'm due to do one for October to December, but don't assume, just double check that those dates are correct. We have the option to use a custom date range. And if we select this option here, it allows us to pick a to and a from date. So that may cause you to think, well, what's the difference there? And to be honest, I've probably only used this once or twice. So normally we'd use whole months and leave it as the quarter or the month you're running it for, or the year if you're annual. However, there have been scenarios where we've had to use this. So some scenarios might be you're just trying to look at your VAT liability for maybe a six-week period rather than a full quarter. Or, now this was an issue a few years back, not the most recent leap year, but we did have an issue where the 29th of February wasn't recognised. So what we needed to do is change this to the 29th for it to pick up that extra day. So I will say it tends not to really need to be used. So we would stick to use whole months, but the option is there should you find you need to use it. The next one we've got here is this little tick box underneath that says include reconciled transactions. And this again causes lots of questions. Should I tick the box? Should I not? What does this box do? So essentially, if we are doing our VAT return for October to December, and it's our first time doing it, there shouldn't really be any reconciled transactions for October to December. We really do plan to only reconcile each quarter or each period once. This tends to be used when something really has gone wrong. Okay, normally someone's reconciled an error and they do not have that option to go back to a backup. So normally for your day-to-day VAT return, you do not need to tick this. This is normally if you've spoken to our technical support teams and this is to get around a problem. Now you can use this if you've accidentally reconciled, but it's not perfect, okay? And that's why we always say the backup is the best option. And I'll explain that more in just a moment, okay? But for your day-to-day, you don't need to tick this box, just if something goes wrong. Okay, next we're going to move on to the verification checks. So the verification checks here, we go into settings, are 8 checks it will do across your data set. And you can switch these on or off depending on your business type. Now this here is where we do have some subtle differences in the UK and Ireland. So what you'll find is if you're an Ireland, your rates in this section here reflect the fact that your standard rate is 23%. So these are slightly higher based on the fact that your T1 is normally 23 rather than our 20. And again in here, normally it's selected as T1 23%. So you can see the differences are very small there in terms of this window. So these VAT verification checks are switched on by default. You can clear them all in one go if you want to switch them off, and you can select which ones you want to do. I'm just going to clear and select all again. I'm going to leave them on because that would be my recommendation, is to leave them on until you realize maybe one of these isn't really doing anything for me. I'm not really gaining anything from it, so I can switch that off. The reason you might want to switch it off is because they do add extra time, because they're checking through your transactions and then highlighting them to you. So like I say, if one of these is highlighting loads of transactions, you might want to switch it off if those aren't relevant. Just to give an example of that though, you might be, for example, a subscription-based company. So you have lots of transactions that are very similar to one another. And what you might find is they keep being identified as duplicate transactions. Okay, so if you've got lots and lots of transactions that are the same, it may just keep saying these are potential duplicates, check over them, when actually you're quite happy with them because that's the nature of your business. So you might, in that case, want to switch that one check off because it's not really relevant to you. It's not bringing you information that's helpful. You can switch that off. Okay. So it's running through these checks. These checks are things that it's sort of saying to you, just double check this one. Make sure that you're happy with this before you submit. It's not saying this is wrong, it needs to be corrected. It's saying this one is just sort of flagging up as something just to give a bit more attention before you submit to HMRC. So I'm going to leave those all switched on, and I will show you some results in just a moment when we generate the return. Okay, now just before we move on, I do just want to highlight in the you've got your 9 boxes here. In Republic of Ireland, you will have 11 boxes and they are labelled slightly differently. Okay, but the principle of this VAT return is pretty much the same in the UK and Ireland. The background of what they're doing is very much the same. Okay, so I'm going to calculate now, and when I click calculate, we still have the option to go back. Okay, we're not setting anything in stone just yet. Okay, so this is just going to do some calculations and flag a few things for me to double check. Now mine will go through very quickly because I only have, as you can see in the bottom corner here, 800 transactions. Now yours will be larger, so it may take a little while for it to run through. So when I click on calculate, it's going to look at every single transaction between October and December 2024 and check if they are eligible for the VAT return based on my scheme. So I'm on a standard scheme, and it will bring those transactions through. So what I'm going to just do is calculate, because what's about to happen now is linking back to that box I mentioned earlier, include reconciled transactions. So what it has done is it's looked at all of those transactions from October to December and it's picked them all up, but what it's also done is it's looked further back in time. Okay, so it looked prior to October for transactions that are meant to be VAT reconciled but aren't. Okay, for me to sort of look at and see whether or not I need to include them or not. So what I have is 2 transactions that meet that criteria. So if we look at the dates of these, they're actually from March okay? But they are meant to be VAT reconciled, they just have not been yet. Okay, so there are two reasons why a transaction should show up here. Okay, anything else would require a little bit of investigation. One is that it's a transaction that's been amended. Okay, the second would be a late entry. Anything else that's sitting here probably needs dealing with. Okay, so it could be that you've got transactions that just haven't been reconciled. Why have they not been reconciled? Are they using the right VAT code? You know, a little bit of investigation into those. So in these examples, I have got a purchase invoice, and this is from the end of March. And I know from my examples that this is a late entry. Okay, so typically, possibly more common on your supplier side, could be they just forgot to issue it at the time and you've had to chase them to issue the invoice. And they have finally issued it, but they've put it on the original date, which is correct, because they do need to send it for aging purposes with the correct date on there. But that means that it won't have been included in your March VAT return. But we do need to tell HMRC about that. So we do need to include this on this VAT return. So that's a late entry. The next one has a bit more of a clue to it, and that's in the details here. So it says cancel, see transaction 769. So what this was an invoice, again dated in March, which has since been cancelled. So it was originally included on a VAT return, the purchase invoice. We've deleted it, and now we need to tell HMRC about that deletion. So we've got a late entry and a correction here. So we need to include these on the return. So we do have an option to include. What we can't do is include one and ignore the other. Okay, so this is an all or nothing situation. If you opt to include, then these will appear again next time unless you do something about them. Okay, so if this, for example, was put in with the wrong date, you might need to go back and amend the date on that so it's got the correct date and falls into the right quarter. But like I say, if you ignore these, next time you come to do your return, you're going to have the same two transactions and possibly a couple more, depending on what you've been processing. So ideally what you need to do is identify from here, if there's something in here that shouldn't be, what is it and what do you need to do to resolve that? Now, I mentioned earlier that if something goes wrong and you reconcile an error, you can tick this box to sort of get around that issue. What that will do is it will include all your October to December transactions. It does not pick up earlier unreconciled transactions, so it doesn't pick up any corrections or any late entries. So that's why this fix isn't perfect. Okay, so it's kind of our last resort. Okay, so I am going to include these on my return. And what's going to happen is it's going to take us on to step 2 now. So step 2 of the VAT return is all about checking your figures before you click on the reconcile option here. So this option here at the bottom is the one which is going to set this in stone for us. And that's where we're going to end today, is at that reconcile part. So we've got a few things we need to check first before we can get there. The first being on the VAT return itself, on this side of the window, we've got all of the figures for each box here. And again, in Ireland, you'll have similar boxes. You will have some with the drill down feature. So that is the icon there with the 3 arrows, which allows you to click on it and drill into what transaction types and what tax codes are making that box up. So as you can see, I've only got sales invoices on a T1. And if I want to delve a bit deeper, I can double click on that. And that takes me right into the transactional level. So you might have hundreds, possibly thousands of transactions in here. You might want to export that to Excel to help you work through those transactions and make sure they're all correct. So you've got the option to send that to Excel. And that feature is on each box that is not a calculation box. Okay, so this particular box here, box 2, is only invoices on a T8. Box 3 does not have the drill down because it's a calculation from boxes 1 and 2. So that's a good way of looking at your figures and starting to establish whether or not they're correct. Now, what we do recommend is running reports to reconcile your figures. Okay, now the reports here, you've got the VAT report. We recommend you run the detailed report, which I'm just going to give you the option for there, the detailed report, and run it to preview and then maybe save it and match it with some reconciliation reports, which can be found in here. Now that is a dedicated session in its own right, and we are running that later this week. I believe it's on Thursday afternoon. I will double check that for you in a moment or two, but we have a 45-minute session on what reports to run, what you should be looking for. So please do check that one out, get yourself registered for that one as well. So that's all about checking your figures are correct. So that's the drill down, and these are the reports you use to check those figures. Now don't worry, I haven't missed anything out. I am going to come back up to the top here because what we've also got is the results of those checks that we set up. So out of those 8 checks, I've got 7 potential queries. So I can view the results here and it shows me which ones I need to look at using the little triangle. So I don't have any potential duplicates. Okay, so it's quite happy with those. But what I do have is some invoices and credits that are using this module here, the invoices and credits module. So I've got a printable invoice, but I haven't updated them to the ledgers. So if we look at these by going onto view, you can see I've got some old invoices on here. Now what I would need to do next is identify what's gone on here. Should these be updated to the ledgers? If so, you need to come out of the VAT return, go and update your ledgers, and then come back and start the VAT process again. However, you might find a reason for these not being updated to the ledgers. So in this instance, it's been someone testing out the module to see whether or not the module is going to work for them, and we've not gone any further with that at the moment. So these aren't really live invoices. If they're not live invoices, then you can probably delete them, but you can do that after the VAT return. It's not going to change your figures if you were to delete these because they have not yet impacted the VAT return. Similarly here, we've got a purchase order which has been delivered. So we've received the goods, but we haven't been invoiced. So again, it's telling me exactly which order this is. So this is from 2021. So if we genuinely haven't received that invoice, we need to work out why. Is it that we need to go back to the supplier and say, look, we're missing the invoice, you need to invoice me? And it might be that that comes through as a late entry on the next return. Okay, but at least you understand why. In this case, again, it could just be that someone's been having a look at the purchase order module. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it yet. I'm going to dip my toe, have a little try of the module, and they've just put a test invoice through. So we're just going to assume in this case that that's what's happened there. But if I did need to update this, I'd need to leave the return again, come back and calculate from scratch. And then we've got one over here. Now this one is possibly the one you're going to see the most, okay? It's a sales or purchase transaction not using my most commonly used tax code. So when we set up those verification checks, you can only tell it one most commonly used tax code. And by default, that's T1, okay? Now you might be of a different business type. Your most common tax code might actually be T0, in which case you can change it to reflect what your business needs. However, what this will do is every time you use any other tax code, it will tell you about it. So in this case here, if we have a look at this one, we've got a sales invoice using a T0. Okay, now T0 is still quite common tax code. Okay, it's just not my most common tax code. So all we'd need to do is establish, is that the right tax code for that transaction? If so, that's fine. We can ignore that. Not a problem at all. So we can literally just close. We don't need to do anything to indicate we've ignored it. It's just that we can move on from that. So I'm happy with these. I'm happy that they've been flagged up, but I don't need to act on them. So I'm just going to close and continue. Now, the next thing I'm just going to talk about is adjustments. Okay, so we've got this adjustments option here. So you might find yourself in a position where you need to do an adjustment, but there are sort of the right ways to do an adjustment. So an adjustment shouldn't just be because you've missed a transaction or something's not quite what you're expecting. Adjustments are normally to be done when your accountant indicates to do so, HMRC indicate to do so, or you are on a specialist VAT scheme that requires you to do so. Okay, so if you've got a transaction that's missing, then my recommendation would be to close the VAT return, put the transaction on, and then recalculate. The reason I say that is because when you do the adjustment using the adjustments feature, it posts a journal. Okay, and many people don't realize that till afterwards. And they go, oh, what's this journal that's appeared? And it's because you've used the adjustments feature. However, if you are in a position where you do need to do an adjustment, then you can do so using this Make Adjustments option. And it gives you the options here of which box you want to adjust. So say, for example, I want to adjust box 1. I can click on the box, pop in a reason. So it might just be that HMRC have given me a letter and said, add 100 to box 1. I can tab across, pop in the amount, and it can be a negative amount. So I can pop in 100 or just put in the negative sign for negative 100 and then save. And as you can see there, it shows you the calculated figure, which was originally there. And the great question there is, would we use adjustments for partial recovery? So yes, partial exemption is a typical example of an adjustment being required, absolutely. Because you will need to make adjustments and that's how we recommend to do it. So absolutely, that is the place to do it. And in a moment, I'll show you something else that will help you with that too. So as you can see, that adjustment has been made and the reported figure is now 780 rather than the 680. So when I close that down, it changes box 1 for me. Now, what you also have is the option to add an attachment. So if you've got that letter from HMRC or that letter from your accountant or that rather lengthy partial exemption calculation, you can add that in. So you might have a spreadsheet that's done all the calculations for you. You can add that as an attachment. Now that means, for example, if you were audited or you had an inspection, then you can hold it all in one place rather than having to go back through all of your documentation. You can add that into the VAT return to hold it all in one place. So that's also a great help. So adding an attachment, just a matter of browsing your PC for the file. Okay, so once I've done that adjustment, like I say, that is going to do a journal in the background, but it won't do that until I click on reconcile. And I'll show you that adjustment in just a moment. So once you are happy with everything, okay, only once you're happy with everything, you can click on reconcile. And that is going to set everything in stone for you, post that journal for you, and create that new VAT return in your list. Again, depending on how much data you've got, that might take a little while. Okay, mine's going to whiz through. I'm going to click on there and it's recommending again that I add an attachment into my adjustment there. Do I want to do it now? I'm going to say no. You can add it later again. Okay, so you've got opportunities. If you don't have that calculation to hand right now, you can add it later. And then we need to flag those transactions as VAT reconciled. And that just means next time we come to do our VAT return for the next quarter, it won't pick up any of these transactions because they have been flagged. I'm going to say yes to continue. Very quick scroll bar there. And that's taking us to step 3. Now we aren't covering these today. This is what we're going to cover tomorrow afternoon. So it's a slightly shorter session tomorrow afternoon where we explain the relevance of a VAT transfer, we show you the submission process, and we record the payment. So that one will be tomorrow afternoon. But what I do want to do is show you those journals. So if I close out of the return, you can see now it's added it to my list. It's showing as pending because we have not gone through the submission process, and it's not showing as paid or transferred because that's what we're going to do tomorrow afternoon. But if I go into transactions, in my transactions, what you can see at the very bottom, there are 2 new transactions, 2 journals between my VAT liability, 2202, and manual adjustments, which is 2204. And in the details, it quite clearly shows you which VAT return number that's relating to. So it's relating to VAT return number 19. And that's what happens when you post an adjustment. Okay, I'm going to jump back into the slides now. I did say it was heavy on the demonstration, so I'm going to just jump back to the slides. So like I say, the slides do show you the differences there. So you can see the VAT return in the UK with the 9 boxes, and in Ireland around 11 boxes that you've got there, and the slightly different labelling that you have. Also those checks, so you can see those checks are relative to the rate depending on your location, but everything else is pretty much the same. And all of those steps there for making adjustments, etc., are the same in UK and Ireland. Okay, this is your opportunity to get your questions across to us. Pretty quiet there, just a couple of questions so far. So if you do have any questions, please do get them across to us and we'll try and get those answered. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you a very quick video about our banking badge, and then I'm going to come back with the other webinars that we've got going on this week. So bear with me a couple of moments, we'll just get this quick video on for you. We'll be back with any questions as well.
We have some exciting news for 50 accounts users. Are you ready to revolutionize your banking experience? Join us for an incredible journey through 8 sessions from February the 4th right through to the 20th, designed to streamline processing and enhance efficiency. Simply attend 6 out of the 8 sessions and the quiz to test your knowledge, and you will earn your very own Digital Banking Excellence badge. This will be added to the new Accredible portal, where you can collect and manage all your badges. From here, you can share your badges with colleagues, clients and suppliers to show your progression to becoming a Sage expert. Imagine a world where your bank transactions are simplified. Now, throughout these sessions, you'll dive deep into topics like simplifying bank transactions, managing customer receipts and supplier payments, mastering bank reconciliation, and revolutionizing your bank by automating with bank feeds. We'll show you how to simplify your routine with bank recurring items and how to correct bank errors. Harness the power of e-payments and add your bank information to invoices for faster payments. Don't forget, to earn your digital badge, you need to attend at least 6 out of these 8 sessions and complete the quiz. Transform the way you work with the bank, get paid faster and automate your processing with Sage 50 accounts.
Okay, so that was just information on the banking badge. So this is great for those who are new, but also hopefully will teach you a little bit more about banking if you're not so new to banking too. So it's really worthwhile. We get lots of customers really excited about obtaining the badge, in particular on our new system too. Just want to quickly cover a question there saying I've always ticked the box to include reconcile transactions. Does this mean my data has been incorrect? So not necessarily, no, because if you have never reconciled that period before, to be honest, ticking the box doesn't make any difference. Okay, so if it's the first time you're doing each quarter, so if you're doing January to March, for example, and you've never done January to March before, then including reconciled shouldn't make any difference. Okay, so most of the time we get that question of, should I tick it or not? It shouldn't make any difference for most of you. It's when things have gone wrong and you've accidentally reconciled that we maybe need to tick the box. Okay, so please don't panic. It's more than likely that your data has been fine. Okay, so I just want to show you the Help Centre. So if you do want more support, you can go to sage.co.uk/help and you will end up on this window here. And if you select Sage 50 accounts, what I just want to show you is that there is a whole section on VAT, and then it does split up into the different locations so that it's giving you relevant information based on your legislation. But in here are links to training videos. There's lots of articles that are also helpful for you too. In addition, if you go to sage.co.uk/webinars, that takes you to our webinars page. And that's not just for accounts, this also has support for payroll and also for HR advice as well. So if we go into the recordings, this gives you the recordings of absolutely everything we've covered. And I think recently we did check and we had something like 180 different topics. So if you're not sure whether or not we've covered something, have a look in here. It's likely we've got a recording on there. But if we pop into the live sessions, I just want to show you what we've got coming up, because like I say, we've got a couple more VAT sessions this week. So we do have tomorrow at 2 p.m. We're going to look at part 2, slightly shorter session. So it's not as much of your day taking up. And we do have some more on clearing data. So we've got the data management tool and inactive records. And I think it's on Thursday, we've got part 3, which is running reports. If you want to run through the reports with us, this is a bit of an interactive session. We try to get you involved. That's the session there for you. I really do want to highlight this one here for you. This is two-factor authentication. This is going live in February. Now, it's not going live for everyone. It will be a phased approach, but if you want to find out more about two-factor authentication and when it will impact you, then we've got a session on Wednesday afternoon on two-factor authentication. But beyond that, if you scroll down, this is where you can find those banking sessions. Okay, now, like I say, you've got to join, I think it's 6 of the 8 sessions. Yep, so you can miss out on 2 of the sessions if you want to. So here you can come and pick out which ones you want to attend. The more the merrier. If you want to attend all 8, you're more than welcome to. And you do need to attend one of the quiz sessions in order to obtain the badge. Okay, so that is the mandatory session. Okay, so I think it's been pretty quiet on the question front there. So just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. We're only a minute or 2 short of time there. So thank you everyone for joining us. Like I say, we really do hope you will join us for the next session, which is tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, take care. We've got plenty of other content going around as well. And we hopefully see you on another session soon. But bye for now.